is another Martis Ministry Prophecy in the News update. And we usually do more detailed coverage on our Blog Talk Radio program on blogtalkradio.com/Martis Ministry. And that program's on every Tuesday, 7 to 8 Pacific Standard Time. And the archives for that is available at martisministry.org. So definitely do check those out. But right now, I cannot help but talk about the deceptive terms that are out there and expose them. Climate change is definitely one of them, as we've been sharing. And eradicating poverty is definitely one of them. And we've been talking about Islam and the rise of Islam, and that has to do with, everything regarding the end time scenario and how that intertwines. They're all intertwined, and they're all leading a big old ball rolling towards a new world order on the earth. And so we want to look at those things. And I know some people say, oh, well, you crazy evil Christians are just all about trashing the earth. But that's not the case at all. Revelation 11:18, God talks about destroying those that destroy the earth. And we are certainly called to be good stewards of what we've been given. Absolutely. But that has nothing to do with what is being pushed with this climate change agenda, including sustainable development, which is a term out of Agenda 21. These are all very sinister. So just getting right into it, let's look at this article here, November 3rd. CBC.ca, Climate Change Draft Reports Predicts War, Heat Waves, and Starvation. Okay, climate change threatens our health, land, food, and water security. Many of the ills of the modern world, starvation, poverty, flooding, heat waves, droughts, war, and disease, are likely to worsen as the world warms from man-made climate change, a leaked draft of an international scientific report forecasts. And it talks about the cause of war also being used to describe, climate change being a cause of war and such. And so the Nobel Peace Prize winning Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change will issue a report next March, on how global warming is already affecting the way people live and what will happen in the future. So the world's problems, everything, lack of food, the famine, the war, poverty, all of these things are being blamed, and the arrow goes right back to climate change. It's like your one-stop shop answer. Climate change is the problem for everything. And so that's what's being pushed on so many levels. Of course, it has nothing to do, they won't say it has anything to do with biblical prophecy coming to pass, the birth pangs of the return of Christ, or any such thing. It obviously has nothing to do in their eyes with wickedness rising or any other thing. This is the only thing that they're saying is the major problem causing everything else is climate change, which is really important to look at. Because the fact is that it is a part of what the Lord told us would happen. And we just look at Revelation 6:1-2. The first seal opens and the Antichrist is shown rising, making war. Okay? The Lord told us this would happen. When it says he went forth conquering and to conquer, that's talking about war. And in Revelation 6:3-4, and the second seal is opened, peace is taken away and people kill each other and make war, when it says, and take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. Again, war. Revelation 6:5-6, the third seal, it's talking about famine and food prices jumping to 8 to 10 times normal cost, when it says, a measure of wheat for a penny and 3 measures of barley for a penny. What it's talking about is not cheap food. It may look like that. Oh, wow, only a penny? That's pretty good. Good times ahead, right? No, not at all. See, this was referring to, the penny is like a denarius. And a denarius was a full day's worth of work, wage, the wage that some person would get. So that's not a lot for just, a whole day's worth of work. So this is definitely talking about the rise of food cost here. So we see it over and over again, even, in Yeshua, Jesus' own words in Matthew 24:6-8, it talks about wars and rumors of wars and famines and pestilence and earthquakes, and all of these things are the beginning of sorrows. And so definitely that's all taking place. The earthquakes, the pestilences is a big part of this as well. And of course the seas and waves roaring, which is talked about in Luke 21:25, which is definitely a part of this. So as these things happen, again, we're going to keep on seeing that the arrow is being pointed to climate change, and that we can save the earth if we just all chip in together and you know, listen to what the officials tell us to do about the climate change. So that's exactly what's going on here in this article. You know, as you know, the seas and wave roaring, we've been talking about typhoons, and there's been so many, but one big one, Haiyan, that just devastated the Philippines. And so that was used as a talking point in the United Nations climate talks. November 11th, Typhoon Haiyan overshadows UN climate talks. This comes out of yahoo.com. And so it definitely talks about, you know, this has everything to do, this is fueling their fire to really do something more about climate change. UN Climate Chief Christiana Figueres also made reference to the devastating impact of the typhoon in her opening speech and urged delegates to go that extra mile in their negotiations. On the sidelines of the conference, climate activists called on developed countries to step up their emissions cuts and their pledges of financing to help poor countries adapt to rising seas and other impacts of climate change. Goes on, asked whether the U.S. had any plans to increase its emissions target in the international talks, U.S. negotiator Trig Taylor said, "The focus for us now is to meet the existing target of cutting emissions by 17% between," and it says 2005 and 2020, but that's a typo, and it should be 2015 and 2020. And she says, quote, "I think that we're on the right track to achieve it." He's noting that Barack Obama's plans to cut emissions from power plants and boost renewable energy and other measures. So President Obama basically, and I'm sorry, it's not a she, Trig Talley is a he, but they're saying, yeah, President's on the right track, you know, he's cutting emissions, he's helping us pave this way forward with this climate problem. And that goes along with what he vowed to do. June 25th, out of the Telegraph, we see that Barack Obama to cut emissions and vow to save planet. Okay, he's like at the forefront of this because it is a big part of the deception. And we've been talking about, for those new to this, we've been talking about how Obama has been fulfilling the role of the Antichrist, the biblical Antichrist, which is also the Al-Mahdi of Islam. And so, you know, you look at the things that he's doing, and he's really certainly setting up for war in so many ways, and already going forth towards war in so many ways. We're really on the brink of the first seal being opened. So right here it says in this next article, foxnews.com, November 3rd, Obama signs order to create climate change task force, may give Fed overreaching authority. Through the stroke of the pen, President Obama on Friday used his executive powers to elevate and take control of climate change policies in an attempt to streamline sustainability initiatives. Okay, that's exactly sustainable development, same language of UN Agenda 21. And it goes on, and potentially skirt legislative oversight and push a federal agenda on states. The executive order establishes a task force of state and local officials to advise the administration on how to respond to severe storms, wildfires, droughts, and other potential impacts of climate change. End of quote. This is not just getting organized to help people because disaster is on its way. This is obviously more power and control going to Obama, like he's done over and over again with executive orders. And of course, why not with climate change? That's such a big part of this deception. So that's a huge thing that just happened. So we see so many major, powerful people in the world, elite, rulers of in high players, wicked rulers in high places, doing these climate change deceptions upon people, like almost like spells. And we see that Pope Francis again is doing the same thing. We've identified Pope Francis and talked about how he's fulfilling the role of the false prophet, the second beast. And so here in this article here out of the EurekAstreet.com, November 3rd, 2013, Climate Denial Tide is Turning. In the recently published biography, Pope Francis, Untying the Knots, Paul Bailey notes that the Pope is planning a major encyclical on environmental matters. It goes on, Cardinal Oscar Rodriguez de Maradiaga confirmed during a recent visit to Australia that Pope Francis is indeed planning a document on the environment. The Cardinal is a chair of the group of 8 cardinals chosen by Francis to advise him, and it is a strong proponent of action on climate change. A strong, quote, a strong and clear statement from Francis on climate change will be heard all around the world. The Pope has proven himself an able and direct communicator, and a document from him will be difficult for our political leaders to ignore. And that's exactly right. His influence on political leaders regarding climate change is definitely there, and we'll look into that in a second. But this same Cardinal Rodriguez that Pope Francis, chose as one of his 8 cardinals, back in 2011, he said this. CatholicNews.com. This is an article. Climate change is a faith issue, Honduran Cardinal says. One of the causes of starvation is climate change. Cardinal Rodriguez is a member of the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace, which in late October published a note on the causes of and possible solutions to the global economic crisis. The note called for the establishment of a global financial authority and a new financial order. A global financial authority and a new financial order marked by greater sharing and solidarity with the poor. Of course, throw that in. All it is a new world order. Nothing to do with caring about the poor. This is the same guy. He didn't choose him for no reason. This is what they all are doing and believe and working towards. And he does have influence on so many things. Pope Francis is the most talked about man in so many ways, on Twitter and on every other way, and he has a lot more influence than people think. Just look at this. Pope Francis and the World Bank boss meet, discuss poverty. October 28th, dailytimes.com. Okay, so he's meeting with World Bank leaders. Yeah, the World Bank is straight wicked, straight evil. They have been the cause of so much death and destruction. Okay, seriously horrible. People just committing suicide because of their policies. And so he meets with him, and this is what the president of the bank, the boss of the World Bank, says, that Pope Francis unites us all with the moral clarity of his message on poverty. He unites us all. False prophet alert. And it goes on. This different article covering the same thing from smh.com. Pope Francis, World Bank President Jim Young Kim mull joint action on poverty. October 29th, 2013. Vatican City, Pope Francis and World Bank President Jim Young Kim have discussed the possibility of working together in the struggle against global extreme poverty during a meeting at the Vatican. Then the article goes on to say, as an advocate, Pope Francis, I think, is unparalleled, he said. His participation and his leadership in the global movement to end poverty would really solidify that movement. End of quote. Mr. Kim explained that the World Bank is also looking at restoring an Interfaith Advisory Council and had already reached out to leaders of other faiths. Okay, interfaith, we've been talking about how interfaith is such another big, huge deception, and how the Pope is an interfaith king. And we see that shortly after the Pope met with the World Bank, then the World Bank releases a report on climate change and global warming. From the Times of India, November 9th, World Bank releases new report on climate change, global warming. And all of these links will be in the description box, so you can check them out yourself. But so obviously he has some influence there. They're working together, they meet, and then the World Bank is now, shaping policies after meeting with Pope Francis. And so then just a day after the World Bank released that report, after that came out November 9th, just a day later on November 10th, we have this coming out. Catholic Church hosts talk on climate from sanduskyregister.com. And it says here this: the Pope Francis is behind this, said Karen Giacco, a member of the social concerns team at the church. The Pope has asked Catholic churches to educate as many people as possible about the effects of everyone's carbon footprint on the planet, Giacco said. The biggest part of this is that the poor and the most vulnerable are going to be affected the hardest, she said. Everybody needs to make a change. Everybody, like both small and great, rich and poor, everybody. And that's exactly what this has to do with, is Revelation 13:16 through 17, the mark of the beast, as we've been talking about, the RFID technology being used to track one's carbon footprint, and that being used as an excuse to our share of helping the environment. Is if we get tracked, then everyone's doing their part. That is what's going on, and it says that the Pope asked Catholic churches to educate people about everyone's carbon footprint effect, the effect of it. And so we've been sharing about this, and how the Pope is really going to set that up, and this is just more along those lines. It's amazing how this is working out. What the Pope is really doing, we have to look at it. Do not be deceived by his humble demeanor, and we talk about interfaith. We saw in that previous article that the World Bank is looking at restoring an interfaith advisory council, right? So interfaith, as we've been sharing, is going to be used as a key time when there's war rising and there's all this chaos. It's just like interfaith seems like the solution to all the chaos. And as we know, many of the wars that are right now going on are Islamic jihad being used to establish a caliphate. But of course, that's not ever taught. There's teachings in Islam that directly call for such violent wars. But of course, that's not talked about. Islam is not blamed at all for what's going on. And instead, actually Christians are blamed for a lot of the problems. And more interfaith is pushed as a kind of a crutch for people to hold on to, like, let's just everybody get along, and it just sounds so good, and it's a total deception. There's Christians are being blamed for everything. It's just, it makes me sick, because Obama and his advisors are actually being used so much. They're in specific positions of power that he's placed them in, and they're being used. The Libiary has been talking straight out about blaming Christians for the Muslims attacking them. I mean, it's just everything, calling good evil and evil good. It's just sick. So the Department of Homeland Security has labeled Christians as a target or a threat. But the real extremists are hiding behind the veils, the deceptive veils, including the veil of interfaith. Because they can lie. In Islam, you can lie all you want. And, interfaith, until they get enough power and control, and then, boom, they just implement in Sharia. So, interfaith king, as we talked about, is definitely Pope Francis. And so, he has a really sinister agenda out for true Bible-believing Christians. And we see this here in this article, addictinginfo.org. Pope Francis takes aim at ideologically obsessed Christians, says they have illness, October 21st, 2013. And we talked about how mental illness will be a label just slapped right on Christians, mentally ill. And this goes along with that. I mean, he's talking right to true Bible-believing Christians. Now, the author of this article is also biased in favor of Pope Francis. Clearly, Pope Francis isn't fond of the extreme idols of the Christian right. Now he's calling right-wing fundamentalist Christianity as an illness. Pope Francis has been very clear about how he feels about ideological purity in religion. He's been particularly critical of right-wing Christian fundamentalism. Pope Francis, it goes on, has railed against economic inequality. There you go again, that poverty. And has criticized the anti-gay and anti-abortion strains that have come to dominate the Christian right here in America. Such ideological extremism, this author says, is dangerous. We're dangerous, mentally ill and dangerous. Ideological purity, what does that mean? Sound doctrine? Sound doctrine is dangerous. That's what they are saying. And he says, not only to Christianity, but to the world. And Pope Francis said as much last Thursday. This is a quote from Pope Francis. The knowledge of Jesus is transformed into an ideological and also moralistic knowledge because these close the door with many requirements. The faith becomes ideology, and ideology frightens. Ideology chases away the people, distances the people, and distances of the church of the people. But it is a serious illness, this of ideological Christians. It is an illness, but it is not new, eh? End of quote. While Pope Francis did not specifically mention Christian right-wing ideology during the Mass, his past remarks suggest he was talking about that ideology most of all. And that's the only part that the author is correct. He is talking about true Bible-believing Christians. And so this is sick if you see this, right? I mean, this is the man, this interfaith talking man, this pusher of interfaith and eradicating poverty and sustainable development right out of Agenda 21. This man who's kissing Muslims' feet, literally and in many ways, okay, more than one, believing and saying that atheists will go to heaven, and that anyone talking about homosexuality as a sin or abortion being wrong is just obsessing. They're just obsessing too much. This is the man that says that if you follow him on Twitter, you can get time off of purgatory. Yes, this is the perfect false prophet. This is the perfect false prophet. I mean, that is so sick. There's no such thing as purgatory. And on top of that, how ridiculous is it to think that we can... What he's saying, it's totally absurd and out there. But still, people are following him, and he is hailed by the world. I'm going to put a link here also for a document that we've done that just shares more about sustainable development and RFID. So you understand, how that relates more to the mark of the beast. Because the second beast, the false prophet, as we've shared before, is the one that calls globally for the mark, as we're talking about, which will be through the excuse of carbon footprint needing to be tracked and all these things. So because, as I've said before and we've shared before, Revelation 13:11 onward describes the characteristics of the second beast, not the first, and then it goes on to describe the mark of the beast in Revelation 13:16 through 17. So I know there's a lot of talk about Obamacare and that being the mark and all these things, but there are many elite, including the Antichrist. There's many elite that are working towards the same agenda, the same. It's obviously they're serving the same father, Satan. But we have to be careful on where we keep our eyes. It's definitely inching towards that system for sure. Back in 2004, there were microchips that were implanted in Mexican officials, actually implanted in Mexican officials, and. But that doesn't make the leader of that initiative, the Antichrist. Certainly it's setting up for it, but, just the same way, Obama has this agenda. It's an Antichrist agenda, and it's leading towards a satanic New World Order as others, but ultimately it's the Pope that's going to be calling for that globally down the line. And so, we look at what these two major players in the global scene are doing, Obama and Pope Francis, and there's all kinds of stuff. We see Obama, of course, leading economic consolidation, inching towards a one-world economy. And I've shared about this in another video about the U.S.-EU negotiations, and the second round of those negotiations have taken place now. It's also known as TTIP or TAFTA. And it's just gotten started. This is an article out of La Quadrature, November 11th, TAFTA down with anti-democratic U.S.-EU negotiations. Okay, and that's important because it's inching towards that system of global trading system, one world economy, and consolidating. So just check out that article yourself. There's a lot in that in itself, but it's just a real sign of the times. And we see Islam, actually, it has a lot to do, obviously, with the times that we're in. And there's going to be more about, I'm going to share in a moment, about Islam and the economy and how that is an important part of the New World Order. We see consolidation, we see lots of things happening economically, but how does Islam fit into that? And there's definitely developments going on there. But we see that at the same time, Bible-believing Christians are being unjustly discriminated right and left, right and left, right and left. I mean, CNN even blamed Christians for Obamacare problems. And you can see that article from Breitbart.com, November 8th. And there's just everywhere. Obviously, Christians are being killed all around the world. Persecution is going up. The Lord said this would happen. And so we look at, all of these things. We look at who's working together and what are the alliances and what is being promoted. And there's so many things. And for one, the first beast, the Antichrist, Obama, we see him showing love for the Pope sometime back, October 2nd, USA Today. Because they like each other's stench of the New World Order. The New World Order smell, and they're attracted to it. I mean, Obama said he's hugely impressed with the Pope, with Pope Francis. Of course he is. They all have the same agenda, the same father. So we see all of these things. We see who is connected. As I talked about, a Libiary is just one of the people that Obama's placed in position of power and as a DHS advisor. And he's now saying that the U.S. is a Muslim nation. Okay? He's the same one that blamed Coptic Christians for inciting Muslims. And he's continuing to show his absolute support for the Muslim Brotherhood. And this is who Obama's literally putting into positions of power. So infiltration of Islam, that's just a small micro level of how it's happening. But it's happening everywhere. It's not an isolated case. On so many levels, as we've been sharing, and globally as well, which is why this next article is really important. Very, very important as it relates to Islam infiltration. OICUN.org, October 28th. UN Security Council meeting on strengthening partnership with OIC. Insaglu stresses OIC's commitment to active partnership and need for UNSC reform, October 28th, 2013. OIC is the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Okay? And listen to what this article says. The United Nations Security Council held a meeting titled Cooperation between the United Nations and regional and sub-regional organizations in maintaining international peace and security. Ding! That's a bell. Strengthening the partnership synergy between the UN and Organization of Islamic Cooperation on 28th October 2013, the first meeting of its kind focusing on the OIC. Who is the OIC gaining foothold and working with the United Nations? Who is this? There are 56 or 57 Islamic countries working towards Sharia and wanting a caliphate. Okay? That's who comprises OIC. And so reforms being made to incorporate the OIC, what does that mean? That means there's a real change, a real new world order in place. They can call it peace and security. They can call it interfaith. They can call it all kinds of names. And we look behind that, and what's being pushed is these Islamic Sharia agenda. Seriously, this is a big, important deal, and we're going to be watching that because I've been talking about how the United Nations is such a global superpower, governing power, and to have the OIC gain more power, through their foothold in the Security Council is it's outrageous, but it's surprising, but not surprising, given the times that we're in. And of course, we see the 1 Thessalonians 5:3, peace and security. I said every time we hear that, we're going to ring a bell because we hear it so much. And praise God that He's, showed us that the excuses that would be made. Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord. Okay, so more about the Islam and the economy. So that is this infiltration on higher levels. We're going to look at Islamic bonds. Right here, October 29th, 2013, RT.com. Muslim money, Britain, first Western country to issue Islamic bonds. Quote, in an effort to attract a booming class of wealthy Muslim investors, Britain will be the first non-Islamic country to issue sovereign Islamic bonds. Prime Minister David Cameron has announced on Tuesday the bonds will be structured in compliance with Islamic Sharia religious law, which prohibits collecting and paying interest on loans. Yeah, big alarm bells should be going off for anybody that knows anything and those that have eyes to see. Why is this going on? Well, Islam on every single sector, on every single level is on the rise. So this shouldn't actually be surprising. And this last article just, it's so shocking, but yet not shocking. It's amazing how this is being pushed. Now they're linking Islamic finance being good for the environment. I'm sorry if I'm getting fired up here. This is outrageous. RTCC.org, November 5th. Is the rise of Islamic finance good news for the environment? Are you kidding me? It says, economic and ethical focus of fast expanding Islamic banks could be good news for green investments. The growing Islamic finance sector could spell good news for investments in clean energy, according to experts RTCC has spoken to. RTCC means responding to climate change. Islamic finance is growing 50% faster than the traditional banking sector, and it has huge growth potential, with assets expected to increase by 250% this year. And it goes on. In an interview with RTCC, Professor Habib Ahmed, a World Bank author and professor in Islamic law and finance at the University of Durham, said the principles and values on which Islamic finance is based could contribute to sustainable economic development. Okay, I'm going to read more. But do you see how this is all being tied in? Everything together. Islamic finance is good for the environment. And they're serious. They're very serious. It goes on, quote, many non-Muslims are attracted to Islamic finance because they find it sound from economic and ethical perspectives. He said, going on, there are already signs the clean tech sector is starting to benefit from Islamic finance. Going on, Prince Charles, who recently said Islamic banking could provide the answers where conventional banking could not, given Islam's emphasis on a moral economy. It goes on, quote, interest in both Sharia compliant and ethical investing is on the rise. Before I go on, the Vatican has also said that Sharia banking has backed Sharia banking as being a good idea and everything like that as a solution. Okay, the Vatican. And it goes on here. Green Sukuks can support this trend by expanding the range of available financial instruments, said the GBSA's Michael Grafferty at the group's launch. Okay, it goes on. A paper published in July this year by the International Institute for Sustainable Development argues that increasing levels of debt in the West will make Islamic banking a safer bet for many investors. It goes on, Mohammed bin Ibrahim, the Central Bank of Malaysia's deputy governor, argued earlier this month that it was an Islamic bank's duty to, quote, enhance the general welfare of society. Quote, the teachings of Islam basically promote preservation of natural resources and the need to respect all living things. I should have put a gag warning there. The need to respect all living things is what Islam teaches. Unless, of course, you're a kafir and an infidel, and then you need, of course, your head chopped off. But it's strange that they didn't put that in the article as part of the teachings of Islam. I wonder why. It's because they're using taqiyya to create a totally different image of what Islam really is. This is absolutely astounding. Astounding that this is serious. I mean, I don't know how anybody can even take this seriously, but they're serious, and this is growing. Islamic finance is growing because it's all rolling towards their agenda. So what to do with this information? I get fired up because it's just such blatant deception right in your face that the lies need to be exposed. You know, we're called to expose these things. And so do not believe it. Do not believe these lies, the sustainable development or anything else that they're pushing. But what can we do? You know, we're not helpless in all of this. We do need to keep our focus and eye on what the Lord has called us to do in these times, and making sure that we're prepared as soldiers and ready to do the will of the Lord no matter what comes our way. Let's look at James 4:13 through 15. It says, go to now, ye that say, today or tomorrow we will go into such a city, and continue there a year, and buy and sell, and get gain. Whereas you know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time, and then vanisheth away. For that you ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall live and do this or do that. But now, okay, and I'll stop there. How important is it to make sure that we're doing the Lord's will, no matter how much we don't like it at the time? There may be times where doing the Lord's will is uncomfortable, many times actually. But it's not about whether we like it or not. We have to be like, Lord, I'm willing to be obedient to you no matter how much I hate this. Whatever it is, I hate it, but I'm doing it for you. Little things, big things, all things. Just a small thing, I want to share with everyone that the Lord had me do. It was very clearly that he spoke to me, and I wanted to be obedient to him alone, is to stop wearing all makeup. Okay, this is what the Lord really clearly told me, is to stop wearing all makeup. If you look in the older videos, you see a lot of makeup and things, and it was kind of strange at first. Yeah, it doesn't matter what I look like, though. It doesn't matter. So I don't look as good as before. So what? Who cares? We're in end times. This stuff doesn't matter. It's all vanity. And it really feels good to not care about that stuff. It's so much easier to focus on the things unseen and the things that God has when we're not focused on the most stupid things that don't matter. Because half the stuff we think about is just ridiculous, isn't it? And me included. So we have to constantly be diligent and obedient and ready and willing to do whatever the Lord wants us to do. Because he knows best anyway. And he will help us and give us strength and guide us along the way. So let's keep on watching and keep on being diligent in our walks. And I love you all so much. May you be blessed by this, and just know that, we're praying for you, and we thank you all for all your prayers too. God bless. Good night.
Lord, I come to worship and adore, humbling myself